I used to be an adventurer like you, but then I took an arrow in the knee. You are listening to Filthy Armenian Adventures. This episode was recorded back in December while I was suffering from that mysterious illness going around and had some downtime to play. I finished up the PlayStation game Alan Wake 2 and recorded this with Adam reviewing that very impressive game and speculating on the question of whether video games can be art. I know this is a sensitive topic, coming so soon after the gamer genocide, so I hope nobody is offended by my illness-riddled, incoherent speculations. If any gamer genocide survivors are listening, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I am felt by you, and if you have any sort of recommendations about what I might be missing and what I should look into, I am willing to sit down and listen.
And like a kiss being blown, we are on the air with Adam Lehrer, longtime friend of the show, host of the System of Systems podcast and the Safety Propaganda Substack. You'll be seeing him writing for a big-time magazine regularly very soon. And I am having you on today because, you know, I thought it's the holiday season, it's the Christmas season, and I very rarely permit myself to play video games, but it's the part of year where I usually allow it to happen when I do. Yeah. And I did finally finish Alan Wake 2, which is a highly impressive game that came out about a year and a half ago, late 2023, I think. And I played it in spurts over the last ever since it came out, because I only played it when my sister brought her PlayStation up to town, in like months apart. And I enjoyed it enough that I looked forward to completing it, you know, as soon as I started playing it. And it's been, I think, widely regarded as the best game of the year or the last year or whatever year it was. And I finally finished it. And so I figured that was a good time to, and if you'll excuse me if I sound stuffed because I've been sick as a dog this week, I figured it's a good time to kind of like wonder about the artistic quality of video games. It's a question that's been asked for decades. It's a question it's a debate that sort of subsided, I think, over a decade ago, when games sort of lost their steam as innovative, like in terms of innovation, it seems to me. I mean, like the debate went from being, can games be this super artistic art form better than anything we've ever seen, to why are there so many like lesbians characters in all the video games all of a sudden? Gamergate kind of took over the entire discourse, and we've never really looked back. So I'm curious to ask you about all these things. And coincidentally, You've played Alan Wake 2. We'll describe the game to people. It's a very, aesthetically appropriate game to fans of this show and to myself, because it references very heavily all of our favorite things. David's very Lynchian influence. It's very Twin Peaks influence. X-Files, Twilight Zone, The Shining. And there's tons of overt influences working through it. I mean, The Return, Twin Peaks is the most pronounced, I would say.
Yeah,
but
it's like a direct reference.
it's a direct, and it's just directly inspired in many ways. And the vibes are also inspired by it. And it's a sequel to a game that came out long ago, which I actually acquired, but couldn't get past the first level. Alan
It's
Wake
very
1.
hard because it's like it feels super dated, the first game does now. And it feels like the technology of the third generation system hadn't quite caught up with the largesse of Sam Lake's concept for the game. Um, so it seems like Alan Wake 2 is kind of fulfilling on the promise of at least the narrative structure and aesthetic of the first game, with being able to make use of the fifth generation technology, which is its own conversation because what you were saying about stagnation in the gaming industry is completely true. PlayStation 5 has been a total bust on many levels, a failure of design. Like, who the fuck wants this ugly ass, gigantic fucking cube taking up all this space in front of your TV?
It's
Uh,
huge. It's huge. It's like a
and
spaceship.
there is literally no reason that it needs to be that big, or that it needs to be, a lot of people's systems are getting damaged just because they can't figure out what the correct way to sit the fucking system down is. Like, people will have it on its side. Nobody knows how to use the fucking thing. But even worse than that is there has been literally no like creative properties that have as of yet dropped on PlayStation 5. All the best games so far came out at the beginning, and they were all basically designed for PlayStation 4 with minimal graphic updates on PlayStation 5. And beyond that, it's just been remakes of classic games, which is like, a lot of them are good, but it's also a tacit admission that these people are running out of ideas. Um, for instance, the best game for PlayStation 5 this year is the Silent Hill 2 remake. Silent Hill 2 is one of the games that, of course, when it came out on PlayStation 2, was one of the games that truly dampened the argument of many of those like Roger Ebert, who would suggest that video games could not be works of art. Silent Hill 2 really fucked them up because it still is an incredibly psychologically deep game, one of a kind experience. And Alan Wake 2, all survival horror games post Silent Hill 2 are referential of Silent Hill 2. There's no doubt about it. That includes all the Resident Evil games that would come after, the Last of Us franchise, and the Alan Wake franchise. I would say Alan Wake 2 is the first game that approximates the psychological fuckedness of Silent Hill 2, while still very much going into its own territory. And Sam Lake, what I like about Sam Lake as a video game designer is that he's created a mythology inside of his games. Like, for instance, in Alan Wake 2, you keep running into the janitor guy, the Finnish janitor.
Yeah.
The Finnish janitor was also in a previous game that he put out on PlayStation 4 called Control, which is completely narratively unrelated, but still operating in this alternate universe where there are fractures in reality and alternate dimensions. And he fulfills a similar function in the Control game as well, which is he kind of guides you through the puzzles and things like that. So I like that Sam Lake, he's building this sort of mythology that even if the games aren't sequential to one another, they're still sort of blurring. The worlds are meant, it's like, in the DC universe or whatever. They're like all happening ostensibly in the same creative world. Sam Lake is doing that with his games. And yeah, Alan Wake 2 just completely blew my mind for a couple of reasons. For one, um, it it
Well,
operates.
let me pause you for a second because I want to before we get to Alan Wake, I want to kind of do a retrospective on your relationship with video games and maybe like the history of video games as you see them as an art form. Because a lot of people listening, I bet, to this show, I mean, I'm sure some of them are massive gamers. I went on Sam's the third place show a while ago to talk about BioShock, which I played. That's the last video game I played before Alan Wake was BioShock, which I played for him because it's a game so heavily inspired by Atlas Shrugged. And
BioShock's fucking hard.
I played it on I beat it. I played it on whatever the easiest form is, which is another thing I want to talk about is like the emotional adventure of playing a video game, which I was able to kind of like not so much microanalyze, but just be very reflective about, because I would play it for a few days and then I wouldn't play it for months. So I would be able to just like look at my behavior while I was playing the game in this bubble and see, well, what was it doing to me, you know? And I was able to wonder, well, what if I had this game? I resisted the temptation to buy my own console, to do all the things that would have permitted me to play it on a daily basis or on a regular basis. So I intentionally kept it away from myself, because the fact of the matter is that these games are so fucking addictive that you just, and that's like, it can't, like, that's 0.1 to 9 out of on video games is just how fucking addictive they are, unless they're not good, or unless you don't care, you know, unless they suck, in case you're not addictive at all. But if it's good, it's so addictive that you can't think about anything else. You don't want to do anything else.
Yeah, it's all you talk about in like conversations.
Well, of course, if you know people that are playing it, that's all you're going to talk about. Yeah, it's all you're going to be interested in. It's all you're going to want to do. There's nothing else you're going to want to do. Your own creative projects are going to become just the most, like, the faintest, most distant, least appealing things in your life while you're playing a fucking video game that's so well realized that it's so consuming and so addictive and, you know, so like fully in control of your faculties. And it's been, you know, I know this, I've always known this. This has always been the fact about video games. It's never changed. It's always been the main fact about video games. And if you're a kid, it doesn't matter, because it matters if you become like, if it's the only thing in your life, and then that becomes a problem very fast. But it doesn't matter in the sense that you don't have a time problem. You know, time isn't finite for a kid. It's infinite. There's no sense that there's anything that you could be doing instead that's actually, you know, important. But as an adult, when you like start playing a game and then you wake up from that game and it's like 3 days later and you're like, did 3 days just pass?
Yeah.
Like, am I 3 days closer to whatever deadline I have and I didn't do anything but play this game? And is it worth it? Like, is this, because when you watch a movie, the other thing about art and games is, you know, when you compare it to a movie and you say, well, the game has so much more in the movie, and does it? Yeah, it does. But also it's 100 hours of your life. A movie is 2 hours. Even a book, I mean, the average long novel takes less time to read. So these are all kind of like important things, which I think are swiftly bypassed, because if you're sort of really into games, guess what? You're going to be making the argument that games are the greatest thing ever and super artistic and, you know, the path to heaven. And so I'm here to be like, let's be very real about what this is actually, what we're doing here, because you can start playing this game and you won't stop. And some people haven't stopped. I mean, people are still playing GTA 5 decades into it. They live in that game. And I also, like, I started playing games for the first time in a long time because of the pandemic. Like everyone else, the pandemic made reality completely fake and pointless. So it was like, well, I'd rather play a video game than watch whatever's bullshit is on Netflix, you know, when they were turning all this horrible shit. So I actually played some games. I tried playing GTA 5 when the pandemic started. I played LA Noire, which I enjoyed for obvious reasons. And it's kind of like GTA 5 for me. It's like it was like if they made GTA 5 without any of the kind of hood bullshit, but just for Alec, it's basically LA Noire. And I enjoyed it and I played the whole thing and I finished it out.
I
And
like GTA 5 when you can just grab like 16 like bombs of C4 and then just like strap them onto every car in a neighborhood and then just like commit an act of mass terror.
I mean, I'm the thing about GTA 5 and any game, obviously what I liked about GTA or what I was interested in was the fact that you could drive around LA, which
Yeah. And
I can
it's
do
so
that in
like,
real life though. But still, it's kind of cool to do it in a game,
but
which is interesting.
yeah, and it's still one of like the most detailed and fleshed out open world realities um ever. And I mean Rockstar is like no one produces no one produces open world games that vivid and detailed to the extent that they do. I mean, I would say open world games are incredibly overrated except for Rockstar games because there's not one line of code in that game, not one character, not one AI who doesn't have like every one of the million fucking characters in that game has lines. You can interact with them. It's truly like a Westworld kind of reality. But yeah, I was really into video games when I was a kid, but up until PlayStation 3. And I would say, yeah, a lot of my inclinations as a artistic type were pioneered by some of the video games that I played early on, like Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, Final Fantasy 7, and I mean one of the first times I ever cried during a piece of media was Final Fantasy 7 when Aerith gets killed by Sephiroth. Anyways, and then Silent Hill 2 was a big one for me and truly fucked my head up badly when I played it when it first came out as a 14-year-old or whatever. But then I went years without playing games. And then when the pandemic happened, we were so bored. So Michelle and I bought a PlayStation 4 and I wanted to play Red Dead Redemption 2 because that was the one that everyone was talking about at the time. And it was just like, it was the best. Great game to start like getting reacclimated to modern video games with because Rockstar games are not very difficult for one thing. It's fun to just traverse through the world. And Michelle and I would do these like we were just like get Chianti and junk food. And we had like a pull-out couch in the living room. And we just ended up living on the pull-out couch, playing video games, going to sleep, having sex, going back to the game, etc. And then once I had the PlayStation 4, I sort of just went back and played all the games that I missed, like Bloodborne. And then I was really into Elden Ring when it came out. And then I played Last of Us and Last of Us Part 2, which completely blew my fucking mind.
Okay, so I want to ask you what it is that blows your mind about the games that have blowed your mind. Now, to tilt you, my relationship to games was fairly simplistic. I was a Nintendo boy. Like, I remember because I'm a little older than you guys, it was specifically like, when did NES come out? 89?
Yeah.
So I was 4 years old. So I literally was there for when the NES came out. And I was like, when, my parents, God bless them for not like raising a nerd, got me an NES around that time. And so I was like, wow. So I have I'm literally old enough to spend like the first 4 years of my life without video games at all because I'm not going to an arcade at that age. So I literally had no video games in my life in the beginning. I was very performative kid as a toddler. I was always like, I was very like active and so that like, there were no video games there was no screens to sedate me. I loved movies. I loved VHSs and stuff like that. I would watch like VHSs of, cartoons like McDuck and whatever, all the Disney stuff. But there were no games. Then the NES came and that was a big moment. That was big. Mario, the duck shooting game. We had that duck shooting game with the gun. I forget what Duck Hunt it's called or something like that. Like the one of the OG NES games came with the gun. I was so bad at that. Played the shit out of NES, all the Marios and stuff. The game that changed everything was not changed, but just that it cemented video games as a thing for me as a kid was Zelda. Zelda came out in 91 or 90 or something, the first one, 92,
Yeah.
90. What do you remember when the Zelda 1 came out? It came out pretty quick. Because there were already a few following that before we get to Super Nintendo, which is like 93. Zelda was such a impressive game to my parents. Like, it was so complex and so artful and so interesting that it was the one game we played as a family. And it's the one game that they played together before my mom split up, my dad, and then also played after they split up together. And we would come to, when the Super Nintendo Zelda came out, we would plan, my dad would come over to my mom's new place and they would play it together. So it was it has this very emotional place in my history for obvious reasons. There was this thing that brought my parents together, the last thing kind of that did so. It's not because I'm a Zelda gay. It's just because it's literally the glue that kept my parents together. It's the source of so many happy memories, and there was so much excitement, when we would defeat a level and get into the next world and whatever.
Yeah.
That's why I'm the Nintendo person in my history. I never had a PlayStation, never had an Xbox until recently. Zelda remained my main interest with Zelda 64, Ocarina of Time and shit. That was the best game ever, it felt like, when it came out, and to this day. And then I played Madden a lot. I loved playing Madden my whole life. I loved, I was super into sports and football, so it was a great way of feeling part of that world. And that was kind of it. And that's kind of where it petered out. My interests, once I became 12 years old, I started my sports card business, and that took up all of my time. And I didn't really care about games anymore after that. I would still play Madden. I would still play whatever Zelda came out, but that was it. I kind of looked down upon the gamer life from the age of 12 on, and with interruptions of and then NCAA 14 was big when that came out. I was that was great because I was super into college football. So that was just a continuation of my Madden thing. And I've dabbled in the Zeldas that have come out on Switch.
Yeah, Michelle's played.
Yeah, I like them. I enjoyed it a lot because I have this really emotional childhood fixation with that franchise, and I think it's actually really a beautiful creation. It's just that it's so fucking addictive that once I start playing, and I do it around every Christmas, I'll do it. I'll permit myself the liberty, the license to play. The beauty of it always is being kind of counterbalanced by how much time it takes out of my existence, which, I don't want to wake up and be at the pearly gates. Well, what did you do with the last 78 hours of your life? You were in Hyrule. So this ain't Hyrule now, bitch.
Roger Ebert, in his argument against games as art, said they don't reach the works of sublime art, basically. He's using a Schopenhauerian basis for definition of art. And it's true, 95% of the games that come out do not meet the criteria for an art experience. But the 5% that do, I think what they have to do is they have to it's the same question, can a genre film be art? Because a genre film has to meet certain criterias for it to work or not. But there can be a genre film made with a certain transcendent quality that rises beyond the limitations of its form. I would say that the best video games and most auteurist-driven video games function in the same way.
There's kind of two sides to the video game story. I've seen arguments. For example, Liel Leibovitz of Tablet Magazine wrote a book called God and the Machine, which I read years and years ago, came out early 2010s. So it's not fresh in my mind. But his essential argument which, that's the kind of book you write when you really want to play video games and give yourself an excuse to do so exhaustively so you can write a book about them. It's like when you start a podcast so you can read and watch movies you want to read and
Do a
watch.
philosophical dissertation on pornography.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, the 100 orgasms of Alice or whatever. It's a great excuse. We're always, but basically all intellectual pursuits are excuses to just onanistically do what you or are otherwise too ashamed to. I think that's the main.
Exactly.
I don't know what Camille Paglia is doing with those arrowheads she keeps on researching up in the woods of Philadelphia, but whatever it is, it must be good. And so he wrote in his art, but his, I think, general argument was that not that video games are art, but that they are religion. That was the thesis of his book. It's quite a dense book, denser than his work typically is. And his point was that, like, you learn, every game is like its own religion. You learn these rituals, these customs, you learn the gameplay, how to do this, that. It's all like this that you you kind of like, you go through the motions, and it's like, it's a very Jewish argument. It's very like a very Judaic argument about what games end up doing, and it was actually quite convincing, because it does feel like you're like worshiping at the temple of this structure, which has its songs and its like moments of glory. It has its great relief. It has its kind of confessions. It has its confrontations, its own rules, its own world. Whether it's an open world or not, no world is truly an open world. Even ours is not a truly open world, is it? In some ways. So, I mean, even reality. So, it has like there are all these interesting arguments about the nature of reality that can arise when you really focus on the obsession in gameplay. But I remember that his main point was to kind of shift focus away from the art question toward the religion question, and I thought it was pretty convincing. Now, that said, when I play a game and I'm trying to track like the feeling I get versus when I watch Twin Peaks on TV, just to make it very simple, like a simple comparison. When I watch an episode of Twin Peaks or a few episodes of Twin Peaks, I'm transported, but my spirit is elevated. I am partially addicted in the sense that I want to know what happens next. You want more. Oh, usually. Although with The Return, I think that was such an exhaustive experience that after you watch one episode, you're kind of good for a while. You're not like...
My dad and I watched it together. I brought the DVD to his house because he hadn't seen it yet, and we watched all 18 hours the day of Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving. So like 2 9-hour days.
That's crazy. I really want to watch it on the big screen in like whatever, if they ever show it on the big screen somewhere. I know they've done it once or twice in New York or whatever, but I would totally love to like, spend 3 days watching it on a big screen somewhere. I was going to say that there's like the element of a game that's gameplay, which has its own kind of magic to it. Yeah, logic, which when you talk about gameplay, like, I've seen arguments by like Cantbot and so on that Donkey Kong, whatever, on Super Nintendo, whatever the various Donkey Kongs when they got good, are like the peak of video games, because the gameplay of the Donkey Kong is the charm in itself. Like the way things in the background would just come out and become obstacles and that you have to avert, and the way that there would be this kind of harmony of everything on screen in the form of a game. It is a game you're playing. It's not some fucking storyline. It's like you're just trying to get from point A to point B, and everything obstacle in your path is the game. And the way that, like, I think, I'm just like imagining this argument, but I see it when you look at like a great Donkey Kong level with the music, with everything, the motion. It's the gameplay that makes it cool. It's like, so there's that, and then there's the story is sort of this entirely separate thing. And the question is, have we been able to marry these two things in a way that is unique to the video game form? Or are we just talking about cool games and gameplay that we like, cool stories that we like? Very seldom shall do the twain ever actually meet where a really good story has good gameplay. Having said all that, let me just start with you. When did you start feeling your artistic shaft be tickled by a video game?
Silent Hill 2.
Silent Hill 2.
Silent Hill 2 was the first game because I think I was just becoming interested in art in a more self-conscious way by the time that game came out. When did it come out? It was like 2001. Yeah, 2001. So I would have been 14 years old. Okay, yeah, perfect fucking age. Silent Hill 2, a game cloaked in mystery, a game with very highbrow references to the history of visual art, for one thing. Not that I knew that at the time, but there are visual references to Hans Belmer's sculptures, Francis Bacon's paintings, etc. But I felt very much in that game that there was this ambitious psychological inquiry that allowed you to break down the psychology of the character in a way that other art forms were never quite able to do. And I think that's because of the immersionary quality of games. Because when we're talking about video games as art, there's two ways you could go, basically. There's one that is the radical immersionary quality of the games allows you to experience a world in a way that you're literally traversing through a dream, in the same way that a film is a dream projected onto screen. But this goes like a one step farther because you're playing in the developer's mind, his dream, and you're on a guided path through the game. But there's still ways that you can manage to get creative in the way that you take those paths. Some games more than others, obviously. The open world games, of course, leave a much more room for interpretation. And then getting back to the Donkey Kong thing, there's games where the art quality is located in like a certain radical nature of the gameplay. The most recent examples of those would be all the FromSoftware games like Elden Ring and Bloodborne. These games are extraordinarily fucking hard. Every combat sequence is essentially a puzzle with you having to learn the exact movements, blocks, whatever, to figure out how to defeat your foe. And there's stakes attached to it because every time you die, you potentially lose all your points, blah, blah, blah. But also what FromSoft does is the narrative is always incredibly opaque. It's not like The Last of Us or Alan Wake 2 where you're guided along a storied path. Instead, you can travel around these little sandboxes, or in Elden Ring's case, this broader world, and you find items, and then you have to look at the item in your inventory and like pick up a piece of narrative. You learn the world that you're in through the items that you find, through the characters that you meet and you engage with, and all of a sudden, a narrative starts to unfold. It's almost like Samuel Beckett, fragments of narrative that loosely interconnect with one another and is basically contingent on you to put them together however you want. That's also a very radical thing to do, and also something that games can only do. And also, I think, a strong argument for why, at their best, they're perfectly possible for being artworks. But say, like, going back to Silent Hill 2, that game is very moving, And ultimately, what is an artwork if not a certain aesthetic? You can be looking at a painting. You can be watching a movie. You can be playing a fucking video game. You're inside a visual world, and if it's working right, it'll move you in some way. And all I remember is Silent Hill 2 was really fucking emotionally devastating to me when I realized finally what it was. You have to wait, you have to play the whole fucking game. It's hard as shit. And then at the end, it explains, oh, this whole world is a fever dream of a guy's guilt after killing his wife or whatever. Like, it's really, really dark, but really amazing. And the way that the video games can kind of reward your work with the revelation of the narrative is really specific. And honestly, at this point, with the amount that video games have achieved, like in the last few systems, it seems honestly like just like you have to really be stuck on the idea that this form can't be artistic to like keep sticking to that argument, because these fucking people have made things that no one thought was possible, entire inner worlds and inner realities that you can enter.
I think that it's not so helpful into the argument to even, like, we don't need to, even though I may title this by these words, I don't think that can video games be art is a useful title. I mean, this is the Roger Ebert thing is from 15 years ago. It's not necessarily the most useful way of looking at it, because it turns it into this very binary thing where it's like, well, you think video games can't be art? Well, what the fuck? Hollywood is bullshit. Like, look at all this. You're telling me Marvel's art? Yeah, we get it. Most movies are garbage. Most of the stuff people are consuming on their streaming services isn't only garbage, but also really tacky, very low craftsmanship garbage, especially these days.
It's not even good trash. It's like trash.
Really bad trash. The cinematography is garbage these days. The sound design is bad. It's like getting bad, and in many ways worse than in a long time. I mean, I was just watching an episode of Mannix from the 60s because it's on one of these weird apps, Plex or whatever. Never seen it, but I've known the actor who's an Armenian guy, Mannix, Mike Connors. And so I watched one of these episodes where he goes back to his roots in Fresno, and it's kind of quite amusing. And I'm probably going to watch more of that show, but the impressive thing was the cinematography is so good. The production quality on that show is great. People were watching this shit in little tiny boxes like you see Cliff Booth in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood on his little black and white TV. Nobody could appreciate this at the time. You look at it now, and it's better than any of the cinematography you see in TV, in like 99% of TV shows now. And so you do realize how much of the stuff people are watching, not only is it garbage, but they're watching it with subtitles on. So their brains have been fried. This is a totally made up thing that people need subtitles now to watch a basic TV show. I got to be at some guy's apartment, because we hooked up, and he's in his 30s, and he graduated from Duke, and he's got some fucking sitcom on, like Friends or whatever the fuck, and he's got the subtitles on, and I'm just like, and he's an American, and I'm just like, you realize that they're showing the punchlines to every joke that comes up on the subtitle
before they actually happen,
before the actor says it. What is this world that I'm living in? And then I go and I contemplate my suicide options and everything. But the point is, it's very easy to be like, well, this game is clearly in a different universe in terms of craftsmanship, in terms of storyline, characters, dialogue. Like it could, you can definitely point to a game and be like, this is way better. Well, Alan Wake 2 is the example. If not the Silent Hill, which I haven't played, but I'm assuming that's
get
where
that
it got
next, because the remake just came out for PlayStation.
Oh, okay, cool. Then I'll finally check it out. I want to get into some of the nitty gritties of what makes games so anxiety inducing to me, though. But in theory, there's no reason that a video game can't be good enough that we wouldn't have to question whether it's art. To me, it's more a question of like, has it truly happened where and how, where a game has actually delivered? To me, art is about truth. It's a way to truth equal to science, if not greater. To me, that's my definition of art. It's not about it's not about all the other shit. It's beauty, goodness, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Effectiveness, entertainment value. These are all ancillary things. The main thing that turns something from entertainment, from whatever other thing it is, to art is that it conveys truth in a particular way. So
Picasso said art is a lie that tells the truth.
there you go. You know, me and Picasso, we have so much in common sometimes.
Hmm.
That's my just one word code for what separates the art from the boys. And so the question would be whether video games bring us in any way closer to truth, in any kind of truth, any kind of truth. Let's just open it up, you know, to anything. That's really the ultimate question. I am 100% easily agreed that a video game can be, we know it can be more entertaining than a movie. It's definitely more entertaining because you played for 100 hours. You wouldn't watch any 100-hour movie. You'd rather kill yourself, you know. There is no 100-hour movie we would watch. I mean, you can easily argue that Twin Peaks is the longest popular movie ever. Twin Peaks: The Return is an 18-hour movie.
The only thing that I could think of that comes close is like Out One by Jacques Rivette, or Berlin Alexander Platz, which was made for TV by Rainer Werner Fassbinder, but it's very obviously like a 15-hour movie.
Yeah, which I haven't seen. I have to see that, but I haven't seen it.
Berlin Alexander Platz is amazing, but it literally requires you to watch it for like 6 episodes before it gets good. It basically weeds out all the fake niggas by being just like unbelievably boring for 6 hours. And then by the seventh episode is like amazing the whole way through.
Right.
It really makes you bear with it.
If we're going to ever have this level where people are actually talking about video games in a artistic language, I think it's going to be because they convey truth that isn't just like movies combined, you know, like.
I mean, I think there have been like moments in gaming history where games have gotten you pretty close to asking some pretty deep questions. I know I keep returning to it, but The Last of Us is literally about it shouldn't be it couldn't be more Hollywood popcorn. It's about a fucking zombie apocalypse. But in the game, you play this smuggler who lost his daughter at the beginning of this apocalypse and is a broken man, but he's tough and he's, you know, a survivor. And he's tasked to protect this little girl who is immune to the zombie virus. And over the course of the game, not only does the character grow really attached to the girl, what the game does is it makes you really attached and protective of the girl. It's a fucking AI, but you end up really being like, I gotta look out for her. So by the time you get to the end of the game and realizing that he's brought this girl to her death because to create a vaccine would result in her death, you don't even have to think about it. You slaughter every single person in sight because even though they're all basically good people trying to do a good thing, you realize that your allegiance is to this little girl because she made you come back to life. Um, so it asks this question about like what's worth protecting. Uh, is it worth killing 100 people to save your daughter? And of course, the answer for most people is yes. And then by the second game, created a ton of fucking controversy. And a lot of the times, video games are quite limited by the people who play them because the game did something incredibly radical, which is that in its first hour, you are forced to watch Joel, your father figure in the first game. You're now playing as Ellie, the daughter. You have to watch Joel be fucking slaughtered, have his head bashed in with a fucking baseball bat, experiencing immense trauma. And of course, everybody was really pissed, especially the fact that the girl was now the playable character. But I realized it was a completely genius thing to do because if they're trying to portray the harsh reality of this world, which is, of course, you know, a metafiction for our own world, bad things do happen to good people all the time, and your actions come back to haunt you. Nevertheless, like, yeah, I think games have tried to deal with very serious and adult content and have their own way of getting you to truth. And it again goes back to the extreme immersion immersionary quality of the games, and also the extreme empathic connection you create with the playable characters and with the side characters that are just like AI on the side. It does something on a psychological level by immersing you in the world in a way that no other medium can. And when you're that immersed in a world, you can sort of extrapolate sublime truths, um, because while you're in that world, you're still thinking about the outside world that surrounds you. And it's rare, of course, because games are, like, for one thing, incredibly hard to make, even harder to make them good, even harder to make them good in a way that's sort of resonant and transcendent on a more sublime level. But when they hit, they fucking hit. You know what I mean? Brutal. There's no game that's ever been so fucking brutal. It's an action adventure game, but there's lots of stealth, you know. You'll be in a room, 10 enemies looking for you, looking to kill you. You can crawl behind them and cut their throats. Um, you can shoot them, but then you make a ruckus. You can have hard objects and bash their brains in. And then what the game really does to fuck with you, say you've killed all the enemies and there's one more, and you get the drop on your enemy by shooting him in the knee or something. He then gets on his fucking knees and he'll either tell you to go fuck yourself, or sometimes they scream for their moms and whatnot. So it really like puts you in the position of a combat warrior, um, who's even, you dehumanize the enemies up until the point that they talk back to you and you realize that you're killing a human being. It really, Zach Langley Chichi once called The Last of Us the Lars von Trier of video games, because it's true. It really is an examination of violence and brutality and survival. And really, in like Grand Theft Auto, for instance, you're killing hundreds of people, but they're all just like cannon fodder. You're not really like thinking about it. The Last of Us humanizes even the most like glaring event, like passable of enemies become people, like you're like, oh my God, I'm killing a person right now. And there's no morality in the game. Like, these are all post-survival figures. So no one's necessarily good and no one's necessarily evil. You're just killing to survive. You should play that shit next, actually. That shit is unbelievable.
The thing I hate most is about video games is the killing. Not the fact of the killing, but like the anxiety of being killed is so. I'm not a pussy. It's not about that. It's just like, I'm just like, I don't need this stress right now. Like, I'm more like, what I want to just be able to like coast through and,
I mean, Last of Us does have an easy option, a very easy option.
Oh, okay. Then I'm open to it. If it's got a really easy option, I just don't want to learn the religion. I don't want to learn like I don't want to learn all the rules. I don't want to learn I don't want to put in all the time it takes to become really good at killing an enemy by, being really fast with my controller. You know what I mean?
Last of Us, as part of their DLC pack, they raised the difficulty to what's called survival mode. And in survival mode, it's literally supposed to be like realism. So if you get shot once, you get put down and killed, basically. And everybody was sort of online challenging themselves to get through the game. And if you got killed, the game just completely restarted itself.
So no saves?
No saves. You'd have to go right back to the beginning. It was literally like, this is you in this world. You better make it work. You better survive.
Do you think that helps anybody actually learn how to survive in the real world?
Fuck no.
Of course not. So it's just a waste of fucking time, isn't it?
Yeah. But, the only people who were doing it were like Twitch streamers and whatnot who get paid just to like play video games all day.
It's like gay realistic. It's like, it's funny that we're having this conversation today randomly by my whim, because it turns out that today is the anniversary of the first ever video game. Did you know that?
And it's for two, created in 1958.
Hey everyone, it's your host Alec Mohibian with a quick note before we begin. Filthy Armenian Adventures is an interdimensional travel program that takes you deep into the cultural mysteries of our strange and interesting times. In search of truth, in search of gold, in search of lost friends and unsung heroes, in search of John Galt's motor. The show is supported entirely by patrons at patreon.com/filthyarmenian. Patrons get access to twice as many adventures, including the most intimate and scandalous ones, plus regular 5 to 15 minute smoke break mini episodes on movies, shows, and topics of the urgent moment. Patrons also get first dibs on our next live event. The first two were a smash. It's very easy to keep Filthy Armenian Adventures alive. You can still listen to the premium feed on Apple or Spotify or your favorite app, and you can do so with the pride that you're putting a little bit of money where your soul is. More patrons means more landmarks, more hotspots, more secret locations, and forbidden territories around the world, and the world that is Los Angeles, our apocalyptic headquarters. It means we'll be able to track down more enchanting figures in the landscape and dare them to abandon their masks. Patreon.com/filthyarmenian. Gracias for listening, and enjoy the show.
God fucking damn it.
What happened?
I'm playing Elden Ring right now.
Is that a game you recommend for me?
I mean, if you have like 200 hours to donate to a game.
Oh, yeah, no. No.
It don't get longer than a motherfucking Elden Ring. It's the biggest open world. I mean, it's amazing. And it's beautiful, but it's like severely hard. There's no difficulty settings.
No, can't do that. All of this is a long way of getting to the game that I just completed, which is Alan Wake 2, which is a horror survivor game. Describe the plot or the kind of opening premise
All right.
of Alan Wake 2.
Okay. Alan Wake 2 is the sequel to Alan Wake 1, which requires its own explanation, but Alan Wake is a popular horror fiction writer, seemingly based on someone like Stephen King. In the first game, his wife goes missing in mysterious circumstances. He goes looking for her, but the first game it becomes quite clear that it's sort of a meditation on theory fiction or the intermingling of fiction and reality, because it becomes clear that Alan Wake is actually writing the events of the game until the point where he gets lost in his own false narrative or the dark place. The dark place is the fantasy realm of largely composed of the titular character's psychology. Second game takes off in two different plots. First, you are a FBI agent called to a local town, the town where Alan Wake went missing, after the disappearance of an FBI agent there. And eventually you come into contact with some of the same supernatural forces that sent Alan Wake to his own hell dimension. And eventually you visit Alan in the hell dimension and he escapes. And then it becomes him and Sega trying to investigate this strange town together, more or less.
Yeah, and you toggle from one storyline to the other. You're playing either the Saga, how do you pronounce her name?
I think it's Saga.
Saga, the black woman detective in the Twin Peaksy type town of Bright Falls.
Yeah.
And which is a beautifully rendered, atmosphere.
Yes.
It has the town, it has a diner, it has all the little things in there. It has a lodge in the forest. It has an abandoned amusement park called Coffee World, which I found very charming.
Yeah. It's in the first
A
too.
coffee-based amusement park, which is really cute. This, all Lynchian shit. It has an old folks home, which might be the underrated best part of the game.
Oh
Not
hell yeah. I love that level.
That level is very well conceived. The NPCs and the characters in it are very funny, very well done. The what's it called though? I forget, the Elda whatever nursing home, Valhalla nursing home.
Yeah, there's lots of references to Norse mysticism throughout Sam Lake's games. He's of course Finnish, and a lot of these figures come from Finnish folklore. But of course, the grandfather's name is Odin, who's the god of Norse mythology, the all-knowing god. And I think the uncle is Thor, which is of course the son of Odin. Um, Lots of interesting anachronistic references between the modern day and the ancient world.
Yeah, there's a lot of Norse mythology aspects. There's a cult storyline in it, which, spoiler alert, whatever, it doesn't even matter the spoiler of it. But there's a cult storyline. There's a sense that she's investigating that what happened is that Alan Wake was kind of destroyed by a cult, and
Yeah, who are
the
obsessed with his novels.
who are obsessed with his novels. So the first thing you toggle between her world, which is in Bright Falls, and much like in Twin Peaks: The Return, the other world with Alan Wake is a nightmare version of New York City, where he goes through levels, one in a hotel, one in a theater, some underground stuff, and outside, and
Hated the underground stuff. It felt like it went on forever for me.
yeah, the underground stuff was the worst because, again, I'm in it for the atmosphere and the vibes and the aesthetics, and I don't give a shit about underground shit. I don't care about subways and like tunnels and
Right.
like, sewers. I want to be in a theater. I want to be in a hotel. The hotel is
Yeah.
really creepy, and
And I felt like that was just like the one level that dragged too much before you got back to Saga in the real world.
Yeah, so to me, it's like I'm judging this game purely as an interactive movie. The gameplay is meaningless to me, except the part that I loved is the True Detective part, which is another big influence, which is uh, the Mind Palace,
Yeah,
whatever it's
the Mind Palace.
the Mind Palace. So Saga has a Mind Palace in which is the True Detective mind board, basically. Well, there's also it's like a room in a lodge. There's a typewriter where she profiles characters, and there are these very well done cinematic cut out. What do you call it?
Yeah.
Like cutaways where when she has found enough information, she can do a kind of intuitive profile of a character
Yeah.
and piece the story together in her mind and have the kind of spirits talk to her of these people. And those parts where I could just press the X button and let the movie play
Yeah.
are my favorite parts of the game, basically. And where I could just go to the mind board, put the clues, you have to kind of slot them in the correct place, which is just a matter of very simple logical, deduction. Have her reflect upon the clues, feel the achievement of tacking all those clues up on there, through the course of the game. I could play in that mind place forever.
Yeah.
That's what I love. I love that mind palace. I
It
love
was a
that mind
terrific
board.
game mechanic too, because the narrative unfolds pretty quickly in the levels to the point where you don't necessarily get everything. So then it forces you to get to a save point, go into the Mind Palace, and then rehash everything that happened and get you, because it's a very complex game, alternate realities and symbols and such. So it's very helpful just as like a mechanic to guide you through the story.
Right. It's yeah, it keeps you kind of keeps reminding you of where we are, what's going on, where you are. Ultimately, why I even bothered to play this game versus the other games people have been talking about, like Last of Us and Elden Ring and all these other highly ambitious, highly acclaimed games, is because it's about a writer. And it's ultimately a story about the creative process, and the process of storytelling itself. It's very much a meta story. And that obviously was interesting to me in addition to the Twin Peaks accoutrements. So that's why that's not only why I started playing, but why I continued playing and why I looked forward to playing. I wanted to see how far and how interesting it would get with this subject matter of what it's, the horror of telling a story in a way that you can survive telling the story. And in that respect, it's not like you're telling the story. It's just, again, it's not so good that you, the player, are telling the story. The story is already told. You're just trying to uncover the story. And the story you're uncovering is about somebody who is trying to tell a story. So, you get the idea. As a writer, what do you think the limits and values of the content of this game are?
I would say Sam Lake is one of the more gifted narrative crafters of the video game industry. Whether it works alone as a work of literature, I'm not sure because so much of it comes to life through the technology. But the game does do things that force you to engage with text in a way that most video games don't, specifically when you get to those puzzles and you find the poems. Um, the way Alan Wake has to literally write his own story to advance the game. Uh, and I think it's a game that wants to be engaged with as a work of multimedia. Um, like, it wants you to research about the game. It wants you to look up what the influences and inspirations were. It wants to create a broader world around itself. I think the best games often do that. Certainly, that's Elden Ring's thing, is creating a sort of fan community around it. And I and I just think there's lots of ideas in it about the ways that storytelling and fiction and how fiction and nonfiction sort of commingle with one another. Like, I'm really into Nick Land's theories on theory fiction, the ways that text can take on a prophetic quality. Think about something like Welbeck accidentally predicting a terrorist attack in Thailand or whatever. The ways that we sort of prophesize things happening in our work, and then those things can actually come to life. Alan Wake's dealing with these themes in a very direct way. Like, Alan Wake is basically writing the reality. It's his fantasy come to life, and that's also you know a metaphor for Sam Lake. And Sam Lake is very like, his games are really self-portraiture in a way that most video games aren't. He's everywhere. Literally, the side character Casey, the other FBI agent, that he uses the face of Sam Lake, the creative developer. It's also fun because Casey's face is Sam Lake's face is also used in their first game, which is Max Payne. So you're having these conversations with this character who you see as both Max Payne and as the creator of the game, talking in the same voice as Max Payne, and you're forced to think about the entire I guess gameography, but the entire bibliography of this video game developer in a game that is very much supposed to be the capstone of everything that he's achieved so far in his career. Um, like I said, he's put out a lot of interesting games, but none of them feel as fully realized, conceptually realized, and as completely fucking alive as Alan Wake 2 does. Partly that's due to the technological limitations of previous systems that weren't there for PS5, but it's also because all his themes from every single game, and there's references to every game that he made before this within the game, they all come together, they all come to life in a way that feels like Michelangelo got it's his Sistine Chapel or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And it does feel like that. It feels like this is somebody's,
Of a
magnum
master.
opus. It's
Yeah, yeah.
like it has that, and when and like just like the aesthetics are so beautiful. I mean, being in the theater, the hotel, there's a movie that plays for 20 minutes on the theater in the theater scene once you've kind of conquered the scene. There's a movie that's just playing, and it's like a very Lynchian avant-garde movie that you can just watch. It's not great, but it's there. It's like, I mean, it's part of the scenery, and it's just there's a lot of scenes where this is what I like about any game that I like to play is like there's just a lot of places where you could just hang around and look around and it looks nice,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like you're walking through the forest while the sun is going down and it's that weird gray orange Pacific Northwest sunset, and you can just like look out into the water and just look at it for a while.
Yeah, and like another thing that's interesting too is just like when Alan's in the dark place is he has to create the text to get himself out of the world, but at the same time he gets more and more trapped inside the world the more that he writes. So there's kind of this like, this pessimistic way of looking at art creation in and of itself, where it becomes its own kind of mind prison. You keep wanting to go deeper and deeper into your own psyche, and next thing you know, he can't dig himself out. Of course, the ending of the game is incredibly dark when you realize that they're both trapped in this place and neither of them are getting out. Um, so it's almost like it's honestly like a lot of it just made me think that maybe Sam Lake was dealing with writer's block, and this is his like Shining, where it's his artwork about being blocked, but it's like such rich. The despair of being blocked, like, is very creatively inspiring at the same time. So it's like, you know, he frees himself, but in reality, he's not freeing himself. He's just going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole the more that he creates. It has this sort of like pessimistic, philosophical tone to it.
Well, it's interesting because I obviously, I felt very strongly the Shining writer's block theme. Um, if you know that The Shining is about writer's block, it's like it's overtly present in this obviously because it's like a horror writer. There's literally an Overlook Hotel. The hotel in New York is called the Overlook, and as if you've ever tried to write the other thing is like genre is a big part of it. The fact that it's a horror, it's a mystery at first and then it becomes a horror. If you've ever tried to write a genre script or, I guess novel too, I've never done a genre novel, but if you've ever been dealing with genre as a thing when you try to tell a story, and the rules and trying to develop your story through the beats of the genre, the expected beats of the genre that make it a specific genre, and kind of coursing through the options in your head of what can happen. There's both a sense of infinite possibility and also of this like loop. And to me, that's the most interesting theme that this game touches upon and makes you kind of reflect on, which is the kind of simultaneously infinite and finite source of story, of storytelling, of what you can make your characters do, of what they can do, and what can be accomplished through pure invention in a fictional world that you have sort of set for yourself. So I felt like that's where this was really trying to go, more so than writer's block specifically, which is like, that's sort of a nebulous thing. Like writer's block is just, you don't know what to do next. There's something missing in your energy. To me, writer's block is about energy. It's about like depression. It's about just having, you should, in theory, you should never be blocked as a writer. In theory, you should be the opposite of blocked. You should be overwhelmed by options. And in a way, maybe that's its own form of being blocked, but it's much the opposite from just staring at a blank screen. You're not staring at a blank screen. You're staring at a screen with a million different options, and you just don't know which one is the one that's true. And that will lead to, the better story. Did you feel that this, you're a writer, you're not a fictional, you're a novelist too, but you're not a horror writer. You're not like a genre writer where you're kind of looking at a storyboard with like, this could be ABC, this could be ABC. We could have we could have this thing attack here. We could have this twist here. Well, what did this playing this game in any way kind of loosen your imaginative muscles?
Yes, definitely. I find it an incredibly inspiring, piece of media. Absolutely. No, I mean, this was one of the games that really it made me think about stuff other than the game around it, just because there's so many references inside of it. There's so many incredibly radical things that happen in the game, particularly around the talk show studio set in the Dark Place. There's that one part of the game where Alan Wake ends up in a horrible music video that seemingly goes on forever.
That's a great part of to me, that was the most impressive artistic feat of the game.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
Because you're seeing a music video, you're seeing a song. First of all, this was one of those times where I'm like, okay, here is an example of what a video game can do that another medium cannot do, which is that the specific gameplay is seamlessly married to the development of the story. So you're literally your movements by going in the right direction, by finding the place to go in a kind of dark and weirdly lit place. You are creating a song in your motion, and it was very fun. And the song is there. By the way, there's a ton of songs in this. They're all great. They're all also so good that you're like, how easy is it to make a good song that sounds so? It almost makes you just think about AI. I'm like, are these just AI type of they're all sort of is popular songwriting such basically just a massive gimmick? It is, I guess, right?
It has to be.
It's such a gimmick. It just makes it does reveal how simple and how gamified much of artistic creation really is.
Yeah.
At the end of every level, a song comes on, which feels like it could be a hit on the radio. And it very subtly reflects the themes that you were just going through, lost in a dark place.
Through darkest dark, I'm pushing through. Through the end, I'm reaching you. Though they keep saying that my baby is gone, I keep on loving you. For my love's the light, holding you tight, holding you tight. And they can never take that away. I'll change the story where it's saying last words to say. I'll change this story so it's saying.
Sam Lake has a great sense of humor too. So the game, like, it, which is also very Lynchian to put these like incredibly absurd and funny things next to things that are all, quite frightening. But the game has like tons of light notes. Um, the character interaction, that zany waitress who's obsessed with Alan Wake, is really funny. The one who looks like Shelley from Twin Peaks. Um, there's like winky and naughty stuff that people might not even pick up on unless they're attuned to maybe our politics, particularly the last time that Saga ends up in the Mind Place. She is because she's been you realize at that point that she's basically been fucking up this investigation like the whole game. Like every single step she took was a misstep, and she for a brief second she comes off as quite incompetent, and you realize she has no fucking clue what she's dealing with. And then there's this hilarious sequence where she's in her head and basically like calling herself a stupid bitch who can't figure out how to save her son or whatever. Alan Wake, it turns out Alan Wake is not saved, but his evil doppelganger Scratch is the one who she unleashed on the world, etc., etc. And then she goes through this whole mind palace shenanigans where everything is just like adding up to more self doubt. And then her way out of it is literally radical self love, where she basically just discounts everything rational that she's been saying for the last 15 minutes and says, you know what, I have to forgive myself. I am special.
And you think that's a joke?
I think so, because Finnish people have a sort of devilish sense of humor like that. I know quite a lot of Finnish guys, and they're so detached from the rest of Europe and the United States. They have their own sort of sense of humor. And I can see, you know, Sam being told that he has to make the protagonist a black woman, and then him like having fun with the restrictions. A lot of that video games, you do have to create a set of restrictions, but then it's about like what can you do within those limitations. And it must be amazing for someone like him who obviously thinks in this incredibly expansive way, to see how that world would actually come to life. I mean, Alan Wake 2 took 13 years to make, you know? This is the product of 13 years of work. Like the amount of effort is unparalleled in all of media to what a game like this actually costs to make in terms of manpower and time and whatnot. But it has to be all the more satisfying because you have this loose idea, this set of references, and then it becomes this completely fully fleshed out, hyper detailed, hyper vivid narrative universe. And what also is great about Alan Wake 2 is that they didn't make it an open world game. You know, it's very much a sandbox game. Like you're locked in these pretty small spaces, but there's so much to find within those spaces that it feels much bigger, which of course is like the better choice for a game like this. Um, yeah, if people don't know what that means, like sandbox games are like they look very realistic, but it's actually like a limited amount of space that you can cover as opposed to an open world, which is like Grand Theft Auto 5, where you can basically move in and out wherever you want to go.
The music
Yeah, that
video
was my
creation.
favorite part. And also the part where you go into the dark place with Saga to fight the old lady boss. Those scenes are just like incredibly, it's obviously supposed to mirror Twin Peaks The Return and Evil Cooper walking through the Black Lodge and shit, but just like to do it as a game character and to imagine yourself being immersed into this hybrid reality, I thought was incredible.
It was definitely something where I had no doubt that I wanted to finish this game. I even got the extension so I can play the Night Springs episodes, which I started, but I think there's a glitch. Maybe if I download the patch, it'll fix it because something item is missing. But I'm like currently the waitress in the diner, and I just serve people coffee. Have you played the Night Springs extension?
I've played one of them. There's like three different like extra games. One of them you play as the waitress,
Yeah.
and she's like chasing her beloved Alan Wake, her favorite writer. Yeah, I played that one.
So I'm sorry. I've started playing that right now just because it's nice to be in. It's nice to be immersed in that world.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
let's like play. In the future, did you ever played a game called Facade?
Facade.
In 2005, it was like this video game, I think on the computer, where it was like a play, uh, very much like Virginia Woolf, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, where you go, I don't know if you can still find this game and play it. You go in and you literally you talk to people in your own language. In your they ask you questions and you respond as on your keyboard as much as whatever you want to say. And the idea is that you affect the outcome of the play. Based entirely on your unique responses. It's actually quite impressive. Like it was 2005, I think. So a long way to go. There was a piece in the Atlantic that it inspired, which I couldn't find. But the idea was that the end game, the like an interactive play would be the kind of artistic, this like artistic landmark for video games. It hasn't really come to pass. But I'm wondering if you foresee like what the next stage of artistic gaming is in your view, like not only what it would be or what you would want it to be, but like what you actually can see actually happening, let's say in the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like PS5 has been such a bust, like I said before, and we're really not going to know what this system is capable of technologically until Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out. If Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out and it's an even like bigger open world with better gameplay, better graphics, not losing anything narratively or whatnot, I would say the sky is the limit. The other more pessimistic side of me thinks we've already might have gotten to the sky. Like it can't go any farther, any bigger than it already has gone with GTA 5 or Witcher 3 in terms of what open world gaming is capable of. So I think if that's the case, we're going to see a small scaling back in games. Indie games, for instance, have become quite popular again. I don't know if you're familiar with a game called Disco Elysium.
I've played a lot of it on my computer, but not in the last few years. I downloaded it. I played a bunch of it. I enjoyed it, but I found it hard to keep track.
Me
But
too.
describe that game for the audience. Describe that game for the audience.
Disco Elysium is a game that takes place in an almost like 2D older system engine. You play a detective in some post-apocalyptic version of an American city far into the future. You have amnesia from a hard night drinking, and you have to sort of piece together this investigation from talking to people. A lot of it relies on your personal insight and your own. It's like an IQ test in a lot of ways. Lots of references to philosophy, Marxism, fascism, 20th century ideologies. It's both very interesting and very maddening if you're not a hardcore gamer because it's fucking difficult. But yeah, mostly I enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm the type to be like I'm still sort of like a blood, cum, and tits type. So with no with no modern combat, it's kind of hard for me to get into a game.
It's actually very suitable for me because I like detective games where the detecting is not, or like where it's psychological insight. That's the ideal game for me in terms of actual challenge. So I liked that part of it. I liked the part where you have to respond. It's basically the gameplay is like you said, you have to use your intuitive. It's a bit of combination of luck because it's like involves dice as to whether something will kind of opportunity will open up for you. But the choice as to whether to flatter someone or to bully someone or to inquire in a certain way or in a different way. I like that kind of gameplay. I like that because it's very real life simulating, you know. So I actually enjoyed that a lot. Where I got, I mean, again, apart from the time, where I got caught up with that was I'm supposed to be at a certain part of the city at a certain time in order to meet a certain person, and I can't remember. And now that I haven't played in 2 years, how the fuck am I going to remember what I'm supposed to do? I don't know how it can go back and remember that shit.
Exactly. And you have to kind of start over from scratch.
Yeah, so I'm like, it's like, God damn, man. Like,
It's
give me
really hard
a.
to say right now. Like I was feeling very positive about video games as the PS4 turned into the PS5, but the PS5, which should be this like colossally advanced system, it honestly feels no different than the PS4 did. And the best games so far are just remakes of games that are already masterpieces. Like these studios are now becoming like they're producing games by committee again. Like what works financially? Oh, the games that have already sold really well. It's losing the spirit of Silicon Valley radicalism that it defined it in the early 2000s. Like PlayStation 3, for instance, there was like a new masterpiece, completely novel in narrative, construction, gameplay, like every fucking month. And now we're on PS5 and I'm looking down the list of all these stupid fucking games that I've wasted my money trying to get into. Dying Light 2, for instance. Oh, this one looked kind of fun. Open world zombie game. Fucking terrible. Quit after 2 hours. Then we got, all right, so like the other Resident Evil 2 remake. That was good because Resident Evil 2 was good. Resident Evil 4 remake. Silent Hill 2 remake. Like it's the era of remakes, which is usually a telltale sign that they are not. And Final Fantasy 7 remake. Like all these games are fucking remakes now. So until these guys can prove that they have something new to do with this new technology that they keep touting, I don't know if I have much room to feel positive for. The only radical game designed for a PS5 and released on a PS5 has been Alan Wake 2. That's the only original property that now what, 4 or 5 years of this system have produced.
Have you heard of the Vertigo game?
Vertigo game.
Check out Vertigo. There's a game based on Vertigo, Alfred
Oh
Hitchcock's
shit.
Vertigo. I just saw it looking it up. I haven't played it because I haven't. It would require buying it and time and so on. But maybe it's something you can kind of like.
Mixed or average reviews. Not a bad game, but doesn't quite stick. I don't know. A lot of these games based on pre-existing properties can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious because I'm interested in the pre-existing property. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Give Last of Us 1 and 2 a chance. It's addictive. You'll get used to the violence. Trust me. 3 hours in, you'll be craving the violence.
That sounds dangerous.
I mean, Hideo Kojima, of course, is doing really radical things still.
Will there be an opportunity, let's say, for like a hyper literary game to be economically created, high technology, small audience, as any hyper literary game must?
I think we're going to get our answer in 2025, actually, because in 2025, the game I was just trying to remember is Hideo Kojima's 2019 game, Death Stranding. Death Stranding was notable for several reasons. The hyper vivid graphics, the Hollywood A-list cast playing the playable and non-playable characters such as Norman Reedus, Leah Seydoux, appearances by famous filmmakers, Mads Mikkelsen. But the game was also notable for how incredibly drudging and boring it could be because essentially your only task in the game is deliveries across a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Um, and people were really into the concept, and as like maybe a work of art, it was quite successful, but maybe not successful as a game because it was so boring. I think Hideo in the sequel is going to take the largesse and artistic literary qualities of the first game and try and work in some actual action and some playability. If successful, that could mark a evolution in the format, I think. And Hideo, of course, created the Metal Gear Solid franchise, which was, of course, incredibly radical and important to the development of espionage games. I think if he still has that desire to make something that is actually fun, in addition to being philosophically strange and interesting, then that would be a positive sign because he has enough power and clout to do something like that.
If you were to get a PS5 now, would you get the Slim, which does not have room for discs, or would you get the big one?
The Slim, because it all saves in your cloud anyways, so you can just download the games as you want to play them, and even if you delete them back into your cloud, you still get to it still saves your place in the game. Saving technology is advanced enough that you don't really need storage on these devices.
Yeah, although the question remains if you would want to have it as a Blu-ray player instead of an additional one, if
Yeah.
that's worth it spatially. But the big one is massive. It's like so fucking huge.
Yeah, I have the big one, the one that came out, the first one that came out. I don't know. I find it to be a cumbersome piece of shit. And I'm just like, dude, you have no idea how many games I was like semi excited for. And then they came out and they were just dog shit. A Plague's Tale. I can't even fucking believe I played this shit. And in one of the games I was really excited for is the sequel to this game called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which was a PS4 game, which was a combination of e-girl, BPD e-girl psychosis with Norse mythology. And they used the controller technology to the audio function and the controllers to the voices that whisper in her head, whisper in your head. And sometimes they fuck with you, and sometimes they try and encourage you through a hard part of the game, whatever. So I was so stoked to play this game. And then I find out right before it comes out that it is a Xbox exclusive now and won't be coming out on PlayStation. So like the business practices of these fucking companies are for sure ruining the culture of it, you know? It's just like it's one of those closed circuit type things. Gaming felt so open in the early 2000s because it was changing so fucking fast. I mean, every time a new GTA came out, it was like an entire new world of possibilities opened. And now we're at the point where GTA is 14 years old and it still feels kind of new when you play it because there has not been that much development in the technology since.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, I guess. I kind of lost track of any of giving a shit about video games at all until this one. So it's definitely
Oh, you know
like
what you would like? You would like Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of the Colossus.
That's kind of it's like it's a puzzle game, right? But it's like these boss fights with these colossus, these colossus motherfuckers. But it's not like a typical combat game. The combat is all basically coming down to figuring out the puzzle of their weaknesses.
I'll see. I'll see. I'll see. I'll poke my nose into these fucking games. I'll see what's going on. I have to feel that it's worth the time. And like what I liked about Alan Wake 2 is that it was simply more pleasurable than any TV show currently playing for me,
Yeah.
except for the occasional, grotesquerie, which I really enjoyed. But it's just very rare that I find a TV show that actually and even grotesquerie, that's just a one season thing, probably. It's very rare that I find a TV show that kind of transports me. I have very little escapist entertainment these days, you know? Especially when there isn't a good college football game on. Like, I have very little that I've realized this in the last few years, very little that I can just sort of, because movies aren't escapist for me. Movies are kind of serious business. I mean, they are in a sense, but they're more kind of serious for me, even the super fun ones. And the ability to just kind of drift off into fantasy land is very limited from the television set for me. That is one of the reasons why I've kind of been, the temptation has hovered. I'm like, well, I've not, like, I can't think of anything I've done that is just, like a board game, like playing a board game. Like because I don't have, there's no one to play a board game with. There's no one to play cards with. If I were playing cards, I wouldn't give a shit. I'd just be playing cards.
I think there's for sure some games you would really, really, really like. But
I don't doubt it at all. I don't doubt it at all. It would have to be something that the secret sauce, and it's, we'll just gonna end it here, but like the secret sauce is just something you really, really like, but then don't feel really, really guilty about having spent your time doing.
yeah. All right, one more recommendation that I think you would like is Near Automata. Nier Automata.
Nier Automata.
Yeah, which is an Android game where you basically play the same game twice from different perspectives of the characters. And there's all sorts of references to modernist philosophy. It's very deep. Michelle loved it because for me it was too easy, but she appreciates the easiness of it. But just narratively and visually, very stunning.
Has there been a single game that has true, like, I guess Disco Elysium is the best example, but give me another example maybe of a truly like high level, truly mystery detective type of game where it's not just it's an adventure game in the guise of a mystery detective game, but there are plenty of those where you're just, going around and kind of, unlocking the truth by finding a thing here and a thing there, but one where you're actually amusingly engaged in the act of solving a mystery. Is there been one of these games that has actually hit the high level? Because I'm not aware of it.
And I'm looking at my collection here and nothing jumps out. There's Detroit Becoming Human, which is a Disco Elysium style game.
Detroit Becoming Human?
Yeah. Also a game with a lot of AI questions going on. And it's a cinematic video game. So you just make choices for the characters and then but there's no playthrough quality to it.
I see.
As far as like, yeah, no, not really. I mean, Alan Wake too, but you already played that.
Do you ever see yourself writing a video game?
Control, Sam Lake's previous video game, is all about unlocking the mysteries of the space that you inhabit in the game, which is sort of like a CIA building that's inhabited by multi-dimensional ghosts and spirits and stuff.
What's it called again?
Control. That game's actually really fucking amazing. Really hard at first because it thrusts you into the action without a weapon. But then as soon as you get a weapon, you then get superpowers and it becomes pretty easy.
Okay. Well, I'll poke my nose in. Maybe I'll get a PS something. We'll see. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for bearing with me on this sick Friday.
Yeah. I got sick in November.
Nice. Yeah, it's good. There's just been a thing going around LA. A lot of people have caught it. It kind of has toys with you for weeks. And you think that you don't,
Michelle got really fucking played out by the same shit. But she's like a weak, feeble woman. So she was played out and I was fine.
Yeah, I mean, it affects people differently, but there's definitely been something fucking with me for weeks. I kind of had a runny nose phase for a few days. That went away. And then like that, it all went away and then came back in the form of a cough. And then like the last few days, I just kind of have been, it's like where you just can't pretend you don't have something anymore.
Yeah,
I
it
can't.
sucks for me, dude, because like all the testosterone and growth hormone I was pinning made me basically like impervious to sickness. So I've been off of all that stuff since September now. So I feel like a normal human again. Michelle and I have been trying to have a kid, hasn't happened yet. We've been trying since September. It's really fucks with you because you keep thinking like, oh, she's late. And then she gets her period, and you're just like, Jesus fucking Christ, how many goddamn nuts do I have to fucking shoot inside of her for one to take effect? And it's particularly dark because I've already had two of my seeds aborted in my day. So it's like God's way of, as soon as you want something, it becomes it becomes difficult. And and then yeah, I like had two books to finish. They're both done now. Starting a new job. All sorts of good things happening, but I really want 2025 to be my year. Like, get these books out, make a ton of money, father a child.
It's going to happen, Adam. I told you you're going to get the job. I called it on this show, so I'm
Yeah,
glad
you
that
did.
happened.
You did.
I had the dream. It was a dream. It came to me in a dream.
Update. Adam Lehrer is now indeed an expectant father. So he's gaming for 2 now. This episode of Filthy Armenian Adventures was recorded over the air between Hollywood and New York City. Guest starring Adam Lehrer, made possible entirely by the rug merchants, ocarina singers, and Bowsers of the Night who subscribe to the show on Patreon to join their elite society and gain access to twice as many adventures plus exclusive smoke break mini episodes on topics of the day, plus exclusive access to our very special live events. The next one's in June. Please support the show at patreon.com/filthyarmenian. If you have an iPhone, do it from your computer browser to avoid their new tax. Thank you for playing, and to be continued at patreon.com/filthyarmenian.